In the heart of the deep, dark forests of Eastern Europe, a legend lurks, a story whispered from one generation to the next. It's a tale of a fearsome, enigmatic figure who lives in a house that stands on chicken legs. This is the story of Baba Yaga. Who is she, really? Is she a wicked witch who devours lost children? A malevolent force of nature? Or is she something more complex? A gatekeeper between worlds? A powerful matriarch who tests the worthy and punishes the foolish? The truth, like the forest she inhabits, is dense and full of shadows. Baba Yaga is one of the most iconic and mysterious figures in Slavic folklore. Her name itself is a puzzle. Baba can mean grandmother, old woman, or even a pejorative term for a woman. Yaga has roots that are much harder to trace, possibly linked to words for horror, illness, or even serpent. From the very start, she defies easy definition. Her appearance is just as unsettling. She's often described as a grotesque old woman with a long, bony nose that touches the ceiling when she sleeps, and iron teeth perfect for grinding bones. She flies not on a broomstick, but in a giant mortar, using the pestle as a rudder and sweeping away her tracks with a broom. It's a bizarre, unforgettable image, one designed to strike fear and awe into the hearts of those who hear her tale. And then there's her home, a hut that spins and moves on a pair of giant chicken legs. To even approach it, a hero must know the secret words. Little hut, turn your back to the forest and your front to me. This isn't just a quirky architectural choice. It symbolizes her domain as a place that exists on the threshold of our world and the other world, the land of the dead or the magical realm. The hut itself is a guardian, a living entity that decides who may enter. Inside, the horrors continue. Her fence is often said to be made of human bones, topped with skulls whose glowing eyes light up the forest clearing. This imagery solidifies her role as a figure connected to death, a chthonic deity who holds power over life's ultimate boundary. But here's where the story gets interesting. Baba Yaga isn't a simple villain. Unlike the purely evil witches of Western European fairy tales, she operates on a different set of rules. She is a force of nature, as unpredictable and as impartial as the wilderness itself. When a hero or heroine stumbles upon her hut, they aren't always met with instant doom. Instead, they are often subjected to a series of impossible tasks. Take the famous tale of Vasilissa the Beautiful, sent into the forest by her cruel stepmother to fetch fire from Baba Yaga. Vasilissa is terrified, but she is also brave, resourceful, and polite. When she arrives, Baba Yaga doesn't eat her. Instead, she puts her to work, demanding she sort grains, clean the hut, and perform other, seemingly impossible chores. Vasilissa, with the help of a magical doll given to her by her deceased mother, completes every task. By proving her worthiness, her diligence, and her good heart, Vasilissa doesn't just survive. She is rewarded. Baba Yaga gives her the fire she seeks, contained within one of the glowing skulls from her fence. This skull then returns home with Vasilissa and incinerates her cruel stepfamily. In this story, and many others like it, Baba Yaga acts as a catalyst for transformation. She is a terrifying rite of passage. She challenges the protagonist, pushes them to their absolute limit, and forces them to draw upon their inner strength and virtue. She separates the wheat from the chaff, the deserving from the undeserving. Those who are lazy, rude, or wicked are often cooked and eaten. But those who are brave, clever, and kind are given the tools they need to overcome their obstacles and claim their destiny. So, where did this complex character come from? Scholars believe Baba Yaga's origins are ancient, predating Christianity in the Slavic regions. She likely evolved from a powerful pagan goddess of nature, death, and regeneration. Her connection to the forest, to animals, and to the cycle of life and death points to a time when humanity's relationship with the natural world was one of both reverence and fear. The forest was a source of life, providing food and shelter, But it was also a place of immense danger, where one could easily get lost and perish. Baba Yaga embodies this duality perfectly. She's often seen as a guardian of the springs of the water of life and death, holding the power to restore life or take it away. She is the wild, untamable feminine power, a figure who exists outside the patriarchal structures of village life. She makes her own rules, answers to no one, and wields immense power. In a world where women's roles were often rigidly defined, Baba Yaga represented a kind of fearsome freedom. She is not just a monster to be feared, but a symbol of raw, untamed power. She challenges our simple notions of good and evil. Is it evil to punish the wicked? Is it cruel to test the mettle of a hero? Baba Yaga forces us to look at the world from a different perspective, one that is more aligned with the harsh, impartial justice of the natural world. Her influence extends far beyond old folklore collections. Baba Yaga has stomped her chicken-legged way into modern pop culture. We see her in books, video games like The Witcher, films like John Wick, where she is a nickname for the protagonist, and even in the Hellboy comics. Each adaptation interprets her differently, sometimes as a straight-up villain, other times as a morally ambiguous anti-hero, or even a wise, if terrifying, mentor. This constant reinvention speaks to the power of her archetype. She is the crone, the wild woman, the gatekeeper. She is the challenge that must be overcome for growth to occur. She represents the scary, necessary journey into the unknown, whether it is the literal dark forest or the uncharted territories of our own psyche. To face Baba Yaga is to face our deepest fears, and if we are worthy, to emerge stronger, wiser, and transformed. She is not a comforting figure. She doesn't offer easy answers or gentle guidance. Her lessons are harsh, her methods brutal. But through her, the heroes of Slavic folklore, and by extension, we, the readers and listeners, learn a vital truth. That true strength isn't found in avoiding danger, but in confronting it head-on, with courage, respect, and a good heart. The hut on chicken legs may spin and hide itself in the deepest part of the woods, but the story of Baba Yaga stands tall and proud, a timeless testament to the complexities of nature, the trials of life, and the fearsome, transformative power of the wild feminine spirit. She is a grandmother, a monster, a guide, and a goddess all rolled into one. And her tale will continue to be told, whispered around campfires, and passed down through generations, as long as there are dark forests to explore and brave souls willing to knock on her door. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the woods. If you enjoyed this deep dive into folklore, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Let us know in the comments which mythological figure you'd like us to explore next. See you then.